guys? I'm so sad. I'm butthurt is what it is. It's the butthurt has set in today. So I'm going to play Chef. I find that Chef is a pretty good character to play, just from a fun standpoint. If you're feeling the butthurt, if the butt's hurting, I think Chef is a good character to go with, because he's wonderful. He's got great sound effects. He's got a funny, floppy, bouncy hat. And I'm not butthurt about Risk of Rain. If you've looked at the title of the video, you might wonder what could you possibly spoil about Risk of Rain in a 100% run that's been going for, I think this is episode 28 now? I'm recording this on May the 13th. And I'm going to upload this coming Saturday. So the day that I upload this Saturday, will be the day before the series finale of Game of Thrones. And Game of Thrones is why I'm butthurt. And Game of Thrones is why there's a spoiler warning in the title of this video. Because I gotta vent about Game of Thrones. And I have a blog that I type to, and I have a Discord channel that I yell at sometimes. And I could just make it like a dedicated 7 reasons why Game of Thrones sucks now video or something, but you know what, I thought at the end of the day, a couple years from now, 2-3 years from now, down the road, when nobody remembers Game of Thrones anymore because it ended so horribly, I think I would rather have my Game of Thrones rant buried inside of like an obscure YouTube series that nobody watches anymore, rather than just have an embarrassing video or blog post that everybody can point to and say, no, see, this is the point in history where Brickroad lost the plot. Like, this is where we stopped following him because we couldn't handle it anymore. We just couldn't handle his butt-hurtitude. Because the butt's hurting, man. I gotta be honest. So, if you're watching this the day that I uploaded on Saturday in the middle of May in 2019, and you're like me, and you've been watching the show, and you've got one more episode left, I feel like you'll either be with me, we have that fraternity going, brothers and sisters in solidarity, people who have the butt hurt because of the Game of Thrones. I like this saw, and I like this monster tooth. That's not a terrible start, I guess. Getting this saw is pretty nice, actually. But last night, everybody was mad on the Twitters and on the, I guess, there's a bunch of social media I don't follow, but I imagine also on the Tumblrs and on the Instagrams and on the Reddit and whatever. I imagine the butts were hurting there as well, because the butts were pretty hurt last night after the episode. Especially, Twitter is my window to the world of pop culture, basically. I don't do a whole lot of social media. I do Twitter. I try to post on Twitter a couple times a day, but I try to not post anything serious, if that makes sense. Like, you're not going to be able to go on my Twitter and get a good sense for my politics, just as an example. And you're not going to get a good sense of, like, how butthurt I was about Game of Thrones. I typed so many tweets, like, angry, just mad, hashtag Game of Sucks tweets last night that I ended up deleting. And I didn't post all of them. I need your monster log. I need it so bad. I need it in my face. That's not a monster log. That is a happiest mask. I guess that's a tier 3 item that I can take. Maybe we'll get our mountain level, next level. Happiest mask will help us get some kills going, though. So, okay. I've been giving this a lot of thought because obviously there's a lot of backlash to Game of Thrones right now, and there's a lot of backlash to the backlash. This morning I woke up and looked on the Twitter, and there's a lot of, well, if you thought it was going to go a different way, you're stupid kind of stuff. I saw that I don't know the guy's name, I'm sorry, something Ramsey, I think. It's one of my favorite movies from this past year was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and I don't know the director's name. But anyway, director of that movie, Into the Spider-Verse, which is phenomenal. There's no butthurt about Spider-Man. Spider-Man's doing great these days. But yeah, he made a tweet to the effect of like, oh, I hope nobody complaining about Game of Thrones liked The Godfather. It's like, you know what? I did like The Godfather. I thought it ended kind of bad because I thought the third movie was a little boring, but I did like Godfather, thank you very much. So there's backlash to the backlash. So I've been thinking about it all morning. I'm like, okay, I gotta be trying to be fair about this, because I give people, I am relentless in giving people crap when they get butthurt about their chosen media. If you ever catch me on Discord or on my streams in real time, you know that I love to make fun of people who are really into Star Wars. I guess the three big ones would be Star Wars, the Marvel Universe, the MCU, I guess it's called, and Pokemon. Because I have no emotional investment in these three properties. Star Wars, Marvel Cinematic Universe, Pokemon, don't care. I've liked some of the stuff from those properties over the years, but I'm not an invested fan. I'm not in the fandom. I'm not gonna get upset if any of these things ends badly or performs badly. I just don't care. But I had to think about it. Like, okay, so what's the difference then between, say, a bad Star Wars movie coming out and every fanboy making a "Oh, my childhood is betrayed" video, and me getting to the end of Game of Thrones and being real butthurt? Like, I gotta justify the butthurt. If the butt's hurting, I had problems with this jump in the last video too, didn't I? Because I ain't got no hobo feather yet, is the problem. If the butt's hurting just because I don't like where the story went, I'm no better than the people who watched The Last Jedi and were like, I didn't like what happened to Luke. Like, that wasn't the proper ending. It's not what I had in my head. It's not what I wanted. So I had to be really honest with myself and be like, okay, am I upset because the story didn't go where I wanted it to go, or where I expected it to go, or do I have like an actual legitimate complaint here? I'm gonna die on this shelf. No, I'm not. We got this. I think we're gonna go down though. I think the Timekeeper's Secret really helped me there when it kicked in. So I've been giving it a lot of thought, and part of to rationalize to myself, like, why is it okay for me to be butthurt about Game of Thrones, but I think it's silly that people get butthurt about Star Wars? And this is not a small question for me. Like, you might think, oh, Brickroad's not in the Star Wars fandom, he has no dog in this race. I'm married to a wonderful woman who I affectionately refer to as Peanut. That's not her real name. She doesn't let me use her real name in YouTube videos. But she loves Star Wars. She's invested. She's been a fan since she was a kid. She has Star Wars stuff all over our house. We have Star Wars pillows. We have Star Wars movie posters on the wall. We have little Star Wars arts and crafts. She's got a Star Wars cookbook. Like, she's had the Star Wars Kool-Aid. And I have spent our entire relationship mocking her relentlessly every time she has been disappointed by something Star Wars related. To her credit, she doesn't play video games, so she hasn't played any of the Star Wars video games, thank goodness. Hey, I like that clover that we got here. Apparently Star Wars video games have been bad for a long time, so she's dodged that bullet. And she's never been a big reader into, like, the extended universe novels. I do have some friends who are big into those books. I think all those books have been decanonized now. I couldn't be certain, though, because, again, I don't have a dog in this race. I don't care that much about Star Wars. But you can imagine, like, how when I kind of poop all over Star Wars, when I criticize it, when I make fun of the fans who get too invested in it. You can imagine, like, one of those people is my wife, and she can make my life just miserable if she wanted to. I need to check if Boar Beach is up here when we kill this one remaining enemy, whoever it is. So, I had to... By the way, she's also butthurt about the Game of Thrones. She's really upset with how the show is ending. So we at least have that in solidarity. Peanut and I do not agree on a lot of media, and I think I'll talk a little bit about that as we go into this episode. Because it's going to be another long 1-hour episode, and I can't talk about Risk of Rain anymore. We've talked about everything Risk of Rain related that's possible. So I'm going to have to fill the episodes with other topics, like Game of Thrones. So, yeah, we watched the episode last night. We were both really disappointed and upset with it. And we're both going to watch the finale next week just to kind of see how the train wreck wraps up. I also, kind of full disclosure, Peanut and I are both book nerds. We've both read the books. We both love the books. I do have Boar Beach. I'm going. Looks like we're going to fight His Majesty here in Boar Beach. And I know that there are book purists out there. I know there are people that, well, this was changed from the books, but now it sucks. And that's not the angle that I'm taking. I think it's very important for media to stand on its own. I think when you adapt a form of media to another form of media, like a story that was once a comic book becoming a movie, or really any combination thereof, you have to take into consideration the strengths and weaknesses of the media you're adapting to and use those strengths and weaknesses to your advantage wherever possible. Which one is this? This is my orange gumdrop. Reduces cooldown if used items. So I can throw my saw more often. I like that. Good. There's an orange gumdrop and there's a pink gumdrop, and I always get them confused. The other one doubles the effectiveness of used items. Like I would throw 2 saws instead of 1. I threw that saw the wrong way entirely. So one of the things I've actually really liked about the Game of Thrones TV series in the latter seasons, because if you're not aware, it's based on a book series written by an author that is notoriously slow. Like, unbelievably, it's almost stupid how slow this author is. The first book, or the most recent book came out when the show was new, in 2011, the first season of the show, and we still haven't gotten the next book yet. So the writers of the show, for the first couple of seasons, were just adapting material from the books. So like, okay, the books have this story and these characters, and they deviated a little bit, but the deviations made a lot of sense, and the story was still really good, because they were just adapting the book, and they did a really good job of taking the story, which the author famously said could never be a TV series, and making it into a TV series, and I really enjoyed those early seasons. The latter seasons, eventually they ran out of books to adopt. They no longer have any books. They have to write their own material. I think the idea is that the author had given them a kind of loose plot outline, like this is where the story's going, you know, just in case I never publish another book. But my understanding is that HBO blew past that, and whether or not they're still using that outline, I couldn't say. But those latter seasons, a lot of what I really enjoyed about them was how I recognized how they deviated from the books. Like, oh, this storyline is not going to happen in the books. These characters are not going to be important in the books. Or these characters who are very important in the books aren't in this part of the show. Like, this storyline's not going to happen. Something else is going to happen instead. Seeing those differences has been very, very exciting to me, just as a fan of Westeros in general, just as a fan of the mythos and the setting, because it looks like for a lot of years, like, we're going to get 2 satisfying endings to the stories that started the same way. I need to get away from this Spider-Man. I am not into the Spider-Verse right now, and I have no verticality. We're going up this wall. See ya! So just as an example of that, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, this is where I'm going to have to start spoiling the story, but honestly, I don't think I could spoil Game of Thrones any worse than the writers this season are, so if you haven't watched the show, probably you're not going to start now, given the feedback that we've seen. Not only from fans who are rejecting it, but if you've watched any recent interviews from the actors, they're all disappointed with how the series went. That was a fact I was not aware of until earlier this week. I tend to not watch like actor interviews. I don't watch award shows and stuff. So it kind of blew my mind after a couple of bad episodes this season where the writing really took a nosedive. Some people told me, like, yeah, look at this interview with Peter Dinklage and Kit Harington, and they're talking about how disappointed they are. Like, wow, I had no idea. But so in the books and the show, there's a character named Jaime Lannister, and he's my favorite character. We've got already an overloading Colossus up here. Whew. That's not fun, son. What am I going to do here? I guess we're going to go up here, and we're going to throw these for a minute. We don't want to get in his hitbox, so we're going to do as much damage as we can here. And then get up and out of here. And then do as much damage as we can from the other direction. Is that the plan? That's the plan. That'll take care of the Colossus. And then we can take care of this other guy. Oh, a charge field generator will be helpful. Nice. I don't want to go into the details of Jaime Lannister's plot. I don't think that's necessary to make my point. But his character arc in the books deviates from his character arc in the show in some very key ways, to the point where they're, by season, I don't know, 5 or so, they're almost different characters. And again, doesn't really matter that much if I die here, because the monster logs I need to get, I already didn't get them on this loop. So I already have to play this game through to another loop to get one of the 2 monster logs that I need. So it's really not a big deal if we lose this run. We're not saving any time keeping this run or losing it either way. I'm not super attached to any runs anymore. I do have a war banner down now, which is nice. And there's some stuff. There's a goat cloth, and some crit glasses, and a mortar tube, and a monster tube. And then we're going to... Yeah, that was worth doing. That was worth doing, grabbing all those items. Without going into detail, Jaime Lannister's character arc in the books, and remember, the books aren't done yet, and I might be wrong about this, I am just speculating, seems to be like a failed redemption story. A character who is a big jackass that everybody hates. Over the course of the story, you kind of learn more about him, and he gets humanized, you start to sympathize why he does the things that he does, and it looks like he's going to redeem himself. But he kind of also keeps doing really bad things, and the redemption arc wouldn't be earned if it just became a redemption arc. So it's going to be like a tragic redemption arc. It's going to be like he thinks he's doing the right thing, he thinks he's being a better person, when he's actually not. And then either he will die a villain, or he will too late realize all the wrongs he's done and atone in the wrong way. How did you get way up here, Sam? Sam the spider? So, a tragic or failed redemption arc. There are other characters in the stories that will have kind of played straight redemption arcs that do terrible things but then atone for them. And the flip side of that, characters who start out doing good or noble things but end up causing more harm than good. This is a story with hundreds of characters. We're going to have all the bases covered. In the show, though, Jaime Lannister, again, one of my favorite characters. I think he's my favorite character in both the show and the books, actually. It looked like he was going to be a redemption arc kind of played straight. And there was a very, very emotional moment. It might have been... It wasn't literally the last shot of the previous season. It was close, though. It was in the last episode, the last couple of minutes of the previous season. There's a really great shot of Jaime Lannister making the right choice at a time where it made all the sense in the world for him to not make the right choice. And I could go into a lot of detail about why that particular scene meant a lot to me as a fan of the show and as a fan of Jaime. And it was a great payoff for his character in the show that would have rang hollow in the books, because he didn't have the same experiences in the books and the show. He's a different character in these two places. I really don't want to get killed by this wisp, and I don't want to lose to a cremator here either 17 minutes in. Let's go ahead and try to find our teleporter real quick. So, they've spent 7 seasons building Jaime Lannister up in a particular character arc. And the first few seasons did follow the books, but when they ran out of books, they deviated quite a lot. And they have kind of a new version of Jaime Lannister. It's a little bit like having a new version of Batman. Every time a new Batman movie comes out, they reimagine the character. And sometimes he's great, sometimes he's not so great, but you're always going to get somebody's spin on Batman. There's not really an expectation that Batman is the same character every single time you see him, is there? Like, that's just not the case. I'm going to die to cremator again. You know what? We're not going to die to cremator again. I've just decided. I've decided to not die to cremator again. We got him half dead, which is good. We are not going to... Oh, you know what? I don't have a dodge roll, though. I do have to go all the way around to dodge these bombs again. One more good pass with a... If I go in with full health... One more good pass with the Somerang, and... my powered up cleavers should do the trick. I might die up here, though. I did. It's fine. It's fine. Give me another chance at my Ancient Wisp when we come back to level 2. Now, I don't doubt that there are people out there that when a new Batman story comes out and it deviates from Batman stories by different writers and different mediums that came before, like those people, there are people that will get upset. my Batman doesn't kill, so when Batman killed a guy in this movie, it betrayed everything I know about Batman. Like, those people exist, and I'm going to try to make the case for why my butt hurt for Game of Thrones isn't that, and I'm kind of using Batman as an example. Sometimes Batman kills, sometimes Batman does not kill. Sometimes Batman is like an action karate star. Sometimes he's almost purely a detective. The character changes based on who's writing him and for what medium. What's important is that Batman remained consistent inside of his own story. For example, my Batman, the Batman that I grew up with, is Batman the Animated Series back in the 90s. I still think this is one of the best cartoons ever made. I will die on this hill. And when I think of Batman, and I'm not thinking of a particular version, that's the Batman that I get, with Kevin Conroy's voice and the gray cape and cowl instead of the classic blue one. The style of that cartoon, the characters from it, that's my version of Harley Quinn, that's my version of Catwoman, that's my version of Clayface, it's definitely my version of Mark Hamill's Joker. That's my Batman. But I've enjoyed other takes on Batman. And if I watched, like, say they're going to do a new Batman movie based on the animated series. Paul Dini gets together and says, we're doing another Batman the Animated Series movie set in that universe with that characters. We're bringing back Harley Quinn and Clayface and all your favorites. And we got Mark Hamill to do the Joker. And then Batman straight up ices a dude in that. That Magworm did not go high enough for me to get some damage on it. But we killed it anyway, and life is good. Nice items there. Got some auto-target missiles, got a charge field generator. If you're telling a Batman the Animated Series story and Batman just kills a dude, like he just grabs a gun and shoots him in the face, that's not good. You've broken the consistency of that version of the character. It doesn't matter suddenly that, hey, you know, there's these old Silver Age comic stories where Batman kills people, or hey, there's that Ben Affleck movie where he kills a bunch of people with a machine gun. Which isn't hyperbole. That's something he totally does in Batman vs. Superman. He drives his machine gun car and he makes explosions and people die. Like, he kills people. But you have to stay true to the character inside the universe that you establish. We've established this version of Batman in the animated series. He'll punch people, he'll throw people around, he will not kill people. This is a line that he doesn't cross. Probably because it's a kid's show, let's be honest. That might be the main reason. So even if your goal is like, we just want to make something for shock value, surprise everybody and show them something they've never seen in Batman, that would be a bad place to go because it breaks the consistency on a level that really hurts the property rather than adds to it. And that's where I got with Jaime Lannister. My favorite character in Game of Thrones is, in the books he has this one character arc, and in the show he's got a similar but deviated character arc. He's gone a bit of a different direction. And then the show that I watched last night took those 7 seasons of character building for Jaime Lannister and essentially just threw them away. They don't matter anymore. It's like we wanted to have an ending that nobody would have guessed for Jaime Lannister. So this is the ending we decided to give him. Aren't you surprised? Well, yeah, a little surprised and hurt and upset that the character didn't get an ending that was consistent with the character arc he's been shown to have in the show since 2011. That's kind of what I mean. So I'm going to try to define, like, what makes a good show. A good form of long-form media. A TV show or a long-running comic series or an anime. Or even like a long movie series. What separates the good ones from the bad ones, not in terms of technical quality, in terms of like art direction, cinematography, special effects, that kind of stuff. Those are technical things that can be objectively measured, but there's always subjective aspects to a show outside of those things that people use to decide whether or not they enjoy it. You can't objectively pin those down, but I'm going to try, and this is the definition that I've settled on. Early on, you set a set of expectations for the story. For any long-form story. You set a tone. This is what the story's going to feel like. You set some expectations. Like, this is what it's going to feel like. this is kind of where it's going to go. This is what you're going to care about, and this is why what you're going to care about matters. If a show does all these things, no Ancient Wisp, Wicked Ring though. If a show does all those things and then consistently keeps them through the entire series, it's done its job well, because the people who enjoy it, even if it's a garbage show, even if it's like the Twilight movies or 50 Shades of Grey or Riverdale, which my wife is addicted to for some reason, or something really bad and dumb like Star Wars, lol, hashtag sunglasses, hashtag got 'em. As long as you finish on the same tone and set of expectations you started on, you've done your job well, because you hooked an audience who wanted a particular thing, and then you delivered on that particular thing. That's what a good show, a good piece of long-form media is. And I think that's why I poke fun at people who play a Pokemon game and are like, this is the worst, they've ruined the series, this Pokemon game is the worst ever. Because all Pokemon games set expectations. You're going to go into this game, it's going to have this really lighthearted story that kind of doesn't matter at all. You're going to collect a whole bunch of cute monsters. You're going to use fire against ice, and ice against fire, and ground against bug, I think? I'm not really sure how Pokemon works. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. If you buy a Pokemon game and you get all those things and you're still upset, what that tells me is not that the quality of the series has dropped, it tells me that your expectations have changed. Maybe you've grown up a little, and Pokemon's just not as fun when you're 20 as it was when you were 9, and that's perfectly fine. Or maybe you want a version of Batman to kill somebody, and you're like, oh, it'd be cool to see Batman kill somebody. I'd like that story, but none of the modern version of Batman really goes there, so I get upset with it. And I think that's where a lot of... Okay, so I haven't watched any of the new Star Wars movies. I know there's like 5 of them out now that's come out. They started the new Disney-owned series, I think, in 2015. I haven't watched any of them. We own them all because my wife is a super Star Wars nerd, but I don't feel like watching them. I don't think I'll enjoy them. It's my understanding that the most recent of these Star Wars movies did something very different with tones and expectations than the previous 10 or whatever movies had done. And a lot of the fans enjoyed the new direction the series is going, but a lot of fans rebelled and didn't want the new series. And I think the blame for that has to fall on the writers and directors of the series. It's a big risk to change expectations like that partway through. You might pick up a lot of new fans who appreciate that you're going this new direction, that you might do new things with the show, but you're going to alienate the people who have been there all along. We saw this in video games back in 2006, 2007, where Nintendo's like, you know what? The people that like Mario and Zelda games, we don't care about them anymore. Now we want people who play Dance Fitness games. And then all the people who play Dance Fitness games went, woo, we love Nintendo! But then all the people who play Dance Fitness games a year later were like, oh, suddenly we love iPhone instead. And then Nintendo's like, oh, well, now we don't have either market because we've alienated them. I'm still bitter about Nintendo. How come every single one of these videos I sit down to record, I end up ranting about Nintendo? I guess that's my own consistency, isn't it? You come here with the expectation that at some point Brickroad's going to say something bitter about Nintendo, and I don't want to disappoint. Let's get an Ifrit up here and get an Ifrit monster log. What say? Who do we got? We have an Imp Overlord. That is not an Ifrit. And we're going to get another Imp Overlord when His Majesty shows up. Ooh, a Frost Relic. I like it. Let's go ahead and get down. I want to be downstairs when His Majesty gets here. I've got 20 seconds to get down. So I think I do understand those Star Wars fans a lot more now. And I think I will make fun of them a lot less going forward. If the people who are mad about The Last Jedi and how it did things that they felt were not true to the series. Even though, from what I understand, I think if I was going to watch a Star Wars movie, I would probably enjoy The Last Jedi the most because of some things that I know that happen in that story that And maybe that's the point of it. Maybe it's like, hey, we want to change up the story and see if we can get some new Star Wars fans in. Because now pretty much everybody's made their decision about Star Wars, right? You like the series or you don't like the series. Like, nobody's on the fence about Star Wars. Maybe that was the idea. Hey, we're not going to get new fans unless we change it up a little bit. But what's happening right now in Game of Thrones is, it's not just with Jaime. Jaime's just an example, but it's like every character arc they've set up, they've spent 7 seasons writing these characters in one direction and doing things in a particular way. And this last season, we want to be surprising, and you know what it feels like? It feels like, okay, our obsessive fan base has guessed how we're going to end the show, so we can't end the show that way. We have to end the show some other way. That's how it feels. Like, we have to rewrite all of the expectations. We have to redo everything so we can end in a way that nobody would have guessed. And I guess I see why you would feel you have to do that, but it's just not a good way to write a story, I don't think. It's not a way that I would write a story. I actually thought about this. I had read somebody's comment at a web forum that I lurk at about, like, here's how I would write a story. If I had, like, say I had 6 seasons to tell a TV story. I would spend 3 seasons, like, I wouldn't go into it with an overarching plot that I'm going to write, okay? I would spend 3 seasons, he says, just writing whatever, just throwing everything at the wall. Like, just seed all these little tidbits of information and, like, drop names and things and and then pay attention to the fan base. And watch what they think is going to happen, and then I would take the best of those theories, and then for the back half of the series, I would just write the best possible story I can using that theory. And I read that guy's comment, and I'm like, that's a really smart way to do it. That's exactly how I would do it if I was a showrunner for one of these shows. That's unbelievable, because then the people who are just in your show for, like, an entertaining show, they're going to get what they want either way. As long as the quality is there. And in Game of Thrones, the quality is there. The acting is there. The pacing and direction are there. The special effects are usually mostly there. Like, the show, just from a popcorn entertainment standpoint, is good. It's good. It's successful. It's making money. It's reaching a big audience. That aspect of it is working fine. It kind of doesn't matter what the writers do, because that aspect of the show has already been nailed and it's not going anywhere. It's going to end strong for a lot of people who were just in it to munch popcorn once a week. It's the, like, hardcore fans, the ones that think about the show a lot, the ones that speculate a lot. Those are the ones you have to worry about when it comes to consistency in your writing and your tone and paying off story arcs and character arcs. Because those are the ones that you could really hurt. And those are the ones that next time you get to be a showrunner on something, they're the ones that are going to be like, oh yeah, this guy nailed Game of Thrones, or this guy ruined Game of Thrones. I got another cremator and I've got nothing to fight him with this time. You know what? I'm just going to throw myself headlong at the cremator. And if we kill him, and we move on with this run. And if we don't, we don't. Everything is fine forever. I do have repulsion armor, which is kind of nice. And we got him. And he dropped, what, a dead man's foot? Okay, let's get up here and... I guess we were a little earlier on the timer, but not that much earlier. We're only like 3 minutes ahead where we were last time. So that's the definition that I'm going to use. If you set a series of expectations early on and then you meet them, you've done a good show. You've done your job. Whatever those expectations are. Whether it's something idiotic like Riverdale, or what's the other show Peanuts really? Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the remake of that. She's been really into that. I think it's really dumb what I've seen of it. I think it's absolutely stupid. But from all counts, the people who enjoy that show, like, they got into it early because it's what they wanted to watch, and it ended being what they wanted to watch. Game of Thrones started as one thing, and is ending as something very, very different in terms of paying off the storylines that they set up, in terms of writing the character arcs. they're not sticking the landing because they've changed what they feel the landing should be. It's again, this isn't about they're not ending the show in the way I want. It's like, oh, I wanted this guy on the throne, and it's going to be this guy, and it's ruined. That's not it. It's that in the first episode of the first season, they set up this expectation of there's this apocalyptic threat that's going to destroy the world unless these people can stop squabbling, you know, get their act together and meet this threat head on. There's no chance. We were told over and over again, season after season after season, winter is coming. The dead are coming. The Night King is coming, and he's going to destroy everything unless we manage to pull it together. And then they kill the Night King with a tiny army and a kind of dumb plan and really bad war strategy. The apocalypse is averted by one of, like, a couple thousand soldiers, it looked like, in the span of a few hours with a cockamamie plan that an ancient, evil, otherworldly Night King should have anticipated at some point in the 8,000 years he's been scheming. You know what I mean? It's like, if you want the guy to be a Scooby-Doo villain at the end of the story, you cannot spend 7 years playing up how he's going to be the end of civilization and like, you can't do that. Everybody was disappointed with the way that storyline ended because it essentially was meaningless. The losses that they sustained during that battle ended up not mattering, and ended up not even being that many losses compared to what we were told was going to happen. Without getting too far into spoilers, I suspect the book story... Ooh, a Guardian hurts. We have some survivability now. I expect in the books, the Night King won't be stopped in the same way. The Army of the Dead plotline won't end the same way. But... And I don't know how I want it to end. Honestly, I don't know how I want that particular plotline to go. I just know that if you set something up for 7 years and pay it off like that, it felt really unfulfilling. It wasn't earned. And then they do this behind-the-scenes featurette after every episode. Like, do I want the snow globe? I think I do, actually. Where the showrunners talk about what we did for this episode and why. And they're patting themselves on the back for, like, you know, we're geniuses and this is great. And there's like, we wanted the Night King's death to be a surprise because we told people for years it was going to be this thing and that all your expectations are leading it to be this thing. And then it's this other thing out of nowhere because we wanted it to be surprising. And I thought about that because a lot of the backlash I'm seeing, especially today here on the Twitterverse, like, oh, you got, like, the show that built up its reputation for shocking and surprising audiences, shocked and surprised the audience, and now you're upset. I want my saw back, I've decided. Saw meringue, bitter roots. So I want to talk a little about just the shock value of it, because that is a valid storytelling tool, is shock value. It's kind of chintzy, and a lot of people would not admit to shock value like working on them, but there's a reason it's such an effective storytelling tool. There's a reason that you go to shock value over and over again. There's a reason that you want to surprise your audience. It's because a lot of times if you give audiences something they don't expect, I guess everybody's down here. If you defy their expectations in an interesting way, you hook them harder than if you just meet their expectations. So, I'm going to give kind of a bad example of this first, before I go to Game of Thrones again. It's a really obscure example. I don't expect anybody watching to have played this video game, but it's the best example that I can think of off the top of my head, because it's one I've discussed ad nauseum inside of this game's fan base for many, many years now. So, back in the PlayStation 2 days, and it occurs to me that I might have viewers that literally weren't alive when the PlayStation 2 launched, but there was a game console called the PlayStation 2 at one point, and I just got a second Guardian's Heart. I like it. And one of the games that came out for this console, kind of late in its development, this was getting on towards the end of the PlayStation 2 now, was Suikoden 5. Suikoden is a JRPG series about war. It's typically not a save the war story like a Final Fantasy or a Zelda would be. It's more like there's a military conflict, and your hero is on one side of this conflict, and the villains are on the other side of this conflict, and then there's this kind of metaphysical subplot with magic and runes, kind of an undercurrent under the whole series. So the games are not connected in the sense that one sequel follows another, but they're connected in the sense that they're all in the same world and in the same universe. But typically, like, the heroes and villains from one game will not necessarily be the heroes and villains of the next game, because the next conflict will be recontextualized. The lines will be drawn in a different way. It's in a different part of the world. Characters from one story might come back and want something different in the sequel. And the game plays with this, the series as a whole plays with this a lot. Like, you'll have a hero in one game who's a villain in the next game, and vice versa. It happens quite a lot. It's one of the more effective storytelling things the series does. So, the game has a character named Cyaleeds. I know, it's a dumb name, it's a JRPG. You have to get used to that. Very anime tropey, this game. It's more heavily anime than any of the other Suikoden games, I think. But there's a character named Cyaleeds, and she's loyal to the hero for almost the entire game. You escape capture and execution with this character. She's on your side through a lot of trials and tribulations. She essentially wants the same thing your character does for the whole game. She has the same motivations for disliking the bad guys. She has the same motivations for wanting to see your side win the war. And there's a scene towards the end of the game, just when it looks like all of your goals are in your grasp. You're just about to take everything the two of you wanted, and then she betrays you. She betrays you, and she doesn't exactly go over to the other side. She betrays you in a way that's like she's kind of on her own side. And she never really explains why she does this. It's been many years now since I've played the game. I mean, I replayed it last year, actually, and I still don't really remember. I don't think she really ever explains why she does this, or if she does, the explanation doesn't make a lot of sense narratively. I can't get my ukulele, guys. I can't get it. I could if I was a merc. I could use my little double jump hip hop. Maybe if one of these guys is really nice and drops a hopo feather, I can get it. We'll have to see how that goes. So Cyaleeds betrays you, and it feels like the writers just wanted there to be a twist. This is kind of a Suikoden staple. There is usually a character at the 11th hour that betrays you. It's the kind of thing that, if you play Suikoden games, you're kind of savvy to it. The very first game has a character, he betrays you. It's out of left field narratively, but his reasons for betraying you make perfect sense in universe. When this character, in Suikoden 1, it's Sanchez who betrays you. When Sanchez explains why he's done it, and there's a scene where he's like, I know I have to be punished for what I've done, and I accept my punishment. I have no regrets. Like, it's a really powerful scene. What he does makes sense when he explains it. And there's some hints in the game that it's going to happen. I mean, the game explains literally, hey, we have a traitor somewhere in the army. Like, somebody is feeding information to the other guys. We don't know who it is yet. It's not explained at that moment that it's Sanchez. But there's also subtler hints. And so if you're like really savvy to the Suikoden games, you'll probably guess that it's Sanchez long before that it is. Not so with Cyaleeds. It comes out of nowhere. If she gives an explanation, it doesn't make sense. It feels like the writers were like, okay, who's our Sanchez for this game? Well, it kind of has to be Cyaleeds, doesn't it? And then she betrays you, and that's that. And her whole character changes after that. She acts differently, she talks differently, she has different motivations, she has different goals. It feels like the writers just made an arbitrary decision. And that's how I felt about this Game of Thrones situation, is the writers kind of knew how the fans thought the show was going to end, the plot with the Night King, the next couple episodes where they're now battling King's Landing. Like, crap, our most obsessive fans have guessed how we're going to end the show, and we have to be surprising because we have a reputation for surprising people. Very early on in Game of Thrones, Season 1, they establish the main character is Eddard Stark. Now, I had read the books before I watched the show, so I knew that Eddard Stark was going to die in that first season. Like, that's how his plot ends. Am I dead? I got killed in one hit there. With I still had hit points, it looked like. I still have... I don't know what happened there. I still have hit points and everything. Whew. Okay. No, I have no idea what happened there. That looked really... Usually, like, I know the game can get buggy. You can go to negative hit points sometimes, but it looked like I still had hit points. That was wild. So the most shopping. The most shocking episode in Season 1 is everything in the show is kind of... all the tropes, all the genre awareness that people have is saying, okay, Eddard Stark is your main character. He's going to survive this, and the next season is going to be about like him reuniting with his son on the wall, which is something he said would absolutely happen, and he had this big secret he wanted to tell him. And they're obviously not going to kill the main character, and they're not going to kill the biggest actor. They had Sean Bean playing Eddard Stark on the show. All these things, like, clearly they're not going to... Oh, they've cut his head off. Okay, so that was shocking. So then you can do something at this point. If you're one of these people who just likes watching good TV, if you just are there for the quality and the drama and the special effects and the hey, if that's all you're in the show for, you're now hooked because they've defied your expectations in an extremely interesting way that immediately changes everything you know about the story. And they've done it early enough in the story because you know there are going to be multiple seasons of this show, and this is just the end of the first season. They've done that, they've defied that expectation early enough where you could be like, you know what, I had expectations for this show, but it looks like my expectations were wrong. So all of those people got hooked. Obviously, the book purists, the book snobs like me, were hooked anyway because we knew Eddard Stark was going to die. For us, it was like, oh man, all these show dudes are in for it, all these viewers, they don't know what they're going to get. And then for the next 3 years, we were like, what's the Red Wedding? Maybe I know, but I'm not going to tell you. Like, I had a lot of fun doing that to people for a couple of years. But, so if you're not going to think about the show in great detail, you're hooked. They've defied your expectations in an extraordinary way early enough that they can pay it off well. If you are the type of person who's going to think about it, like, okay, this shocking thing, does it make sense? Did they do this for a reason? Then it pays off even more. Because you think about all the players on the scene, in the scene where Eddard Stark gets executed. You've got Eddard up there who wants to go tell his son this this horrible secret that we don't know about yet, that he wants to have this reunion with his children, and the viewers want this too. And he's this noble character who always does the right thing in a world where nobody does the right thing. And then next to him you have Sansa Stark, his young, naive daughter who sold him out. And you've got Cersei Lannister, who wants this to play out a particular way, and who wants to see Eddard Stark defeated but not killed, because if he's defeated, she wins, but if he's killed, it creates way too many new problems. And then you've got Joffrey Baratheon up there, who, again, he also has his own motivations for wanting to do what ends up happening. So what ends up happening is everybody expects Eddard is going to be pardoned. Joffrey the king is going to say, you're a traitor, we're going to give you the opportunity to go to the wall. I'm going to give this ancient Weosp an opportunity to give me a monster log. But I think we're going to fight the Wisp later because he's heavily guarded by children. One of which is an electric children. Oh, I can kill the electric children from back here. Yeah, we take care of the elites back here. And let's go get this Wisp. So, Sansa's motivation in this scene for selling out her father makes sense when you think about it, because she thinks she's going to marry this noble king, and she thinks that people who do good things will get what they deserve in the end. My father is a guy who does good things, so he's not going to die this way. It's not how it's going to happen. Like, I have faith in my king and in the concept of chivalry and doing something noble. She thought she's doing the right thing, and she's standing there all smug, and she begs for her father's forgiveness of her noble king, thinking that she's doing what's right for everybody. And you have Cersei there. Cersei wants Eddard to lose, because that means that she wins and furthers her goals, but she doesn't want him to die, because then she doesn't have... Like, her goals could be furthered by having him as a clear... Like, look at Eddard Stark the traitor, and I've saved the realm from Eddard Stark, and he's still alive up there at the wall, and maybe he's plotting against me. This all serves Cersei well. Also, if Eddard Stark dies, that intensifies the war in the north that Cersei does not want right now. Then you have Joffrey, who is this just douchebag of this child's king. And Joffrey is basically king in name only. He doesn't get a lot of opportunities to wield power. He's a spoiled brat, and that's kind of how a lot of the characters treat him in the show. And Joffrey thinks, this is my opportunity to show that I'm a real king, that I can make hard decisions. And so, instead of pardoning Eddard Stark, he says, I hereby order you to execute him. Sir Ilyn, bring me his head. So, you see this horrible, shocking thing, but when you think about it, and you think about the characters who are here and what you know about them so far, they make sense. The payoff is good. I gotta kill this wisp back here. There's a Hoppo feather. Nice. So the ancient wisp doesn't shoot me like he just did. Okay, we're good. We got a Hoppo feather. We've got an infusion in there too. I didn't even see when I picked that up. Nice. This run might go somewhere. The more you think about a storyline in Game of Thrones, in the books and in the first 5.5, maybe 6 seasons of the show, the more you think about it, the more rewarded you are. Because the more you realize all of this makes sense in universe, the more details you uncover and you see, and the more it makes sense. Like, of course Eddard Stark's not going to survive this. That would not make sense given this universe we're being shown. Like, that... And of course Eddard Stark's not the main character of the story, because the story is going to be about changing power in this realm. So it's going to be his children who have to carry on his legacy in a variety of ways, and it doesn't make sense to introduce all these children and send them off all these different directions only to keep Eddard Stark in the story. And so a couple seasons later, when Catelyn Stark gets killed, you have the same realization. Like, of course that's what was going to happen. Like, of course it doesn't make sense for Robb to stay king in the North for the whole story. Of course it makes sense for the Lannisters and the Freys. That, you know what I mean? The more you think about it, the more rewarded you are. I love stories that have this quality. I think the show Lost has this quality. A lot of people are disappointed in Lost. But the more you think about Lost, the more I think it actually makes sense. I need water. Where's my water? It's over here. I am drinking water out of a Homer Simpson dressed as Santa Claus cup today. Ah, delicious. I'm also a big fanboy and or apologist for the Metal Gear games. I love Metal Gear Solid, and I think those stories also have this quality. The more you think about a Metal Gear story, the more details you uncover, the more it makes sense. Maybe sense is the wrong word to use here. I'm going to stick with rewarded, because like the Metal Gear stories in particular get really silly, really weird, but it's a kind of consistent weirdness. So I still feel very rewarded the more I analyze and think about Metal Gear stories. I think, and that's the kind of story that Game of Thrones set itself up to be, going back to what I said about setting expectations. The expectations that the show set were not, this is going to be a fantasy story with a happy ending. The expectations that were set were not, this is going to be just a shocking show that's going to shock you with constant surprising shocks, and also there's violence and boobies. You know what? This is a portent that I have the Salmarang yet again in this video, so we're going to take it. The expectation that it set for most of Game of Thrones' core fan base was, the more you think about this story and this world and these characters, the more rewarded you will be. Because there's always another layer of detail to find. There's always character motivations underlying everything that makes sense. And where this last season has betrayed us is it no longer has that quality. Now, if you think about anything that's happened in any episode of Game of Thrones, probably since episode 3 this season, the more you think about it, the less you are rewarded. And some of the backlash I've seen on the Twitter today, this is all developing as I'm recording this. This is all still very new and fresh in everyone's minds. But the backlash I'm seeing on Twitter is like, don't think about it so hard. Just enjoy the show. Why can't you just enjoy the show and not get upset? Like, because the more you think about it, the more it doesn't make sense that one episode Daenerys can get blindsided by a ship with a dragon-killing crossbow on it, and the next episode, that same dragon can kill dozens of these ships effortlessly. It doesn't make sense that you spend 7 seasons building up this apocalyptic battle between the living and the dead, and then it's over in 10 minutes. And you've lost basically nothing. A couple of characters died during that battle, but a couple thousand soldiers is all it took. They could have done it at any point. There was a whole several seasons were spent with Stannis Baratheon beyond the wall, and he had his army gearing up to protect the realm from the Night King. At any point, Stannis could have marched his army north and fought the Night King and won. At any point. All it took is one person to stab one guy. So that when you see fans saying that nothing makes sense in this season, when you see fans saying that like the story isn't paying off, that's what they mean. It's like it just doesn't feel earned that they're ending the story this way, because if you think about it, you're no longer rewarded for thinking about it. I think my favorite example from this season is one of my favorite characters, again, both in the book and the show, and who I suspect has a similar character arc. I think this character is going to be pretty much the same in the book and the show. He's going to have at least one adventure in the books that did not get put into the show, but I think he's going to end up in about the same place, is Davos Seaworth. Sir Davos the Onion Knight. I'm a big fan of Sir Davos. I like Sir Davos' character in the books a lot. Mainly because I'm hashtag Team Stannis in the books. I mean, I know Stannis isn't going to win, but big fan of Stannis the Manus. I'm rooting for him. So Davos is a smuggler. And Davos, his backstory is one of my favorite pieces of backstory in the books that you learn about in Sir Davos' chapters in the books. And I would love to actually just read like a novella about this story. But I think this happened during Robert's Rebellion. So about 15 to 20-ish years, depending on which season you're watching, before the first season of Game of Thrones. It was Robert's Rebellion. And part of Robert's Rebellion was a siege on, was it Dragonstone or Storm's End? It must have been Dragonstone, I think. No, it has to be Storm's End, because Storm's End is the seat of House Baratheon. So Stannis' big brother Robert is off fighting his rebellion, and Stannis is holding Storm's End from their enemies. They're besieged. They can't get supplies in. The Targaryen armies are just going to starve them out. That's how they're going to defeat them. Sir Davos wasn't Sir Davos at the time. He's a smuggler and a pirate. He's a bad guy. A bad guy in the sense that he's a criminal, not a bad guy in the sense that he does bad things. He has a strong moral compass. But he makes his bread and salt by smuggling goods. And what he does is he smuggles a shipment of onions into Storm's End Come on, Cremator. Let's go. You and me, buddy. Let's throw away this infusion. Where are you at, son? We are dead. But I don't care, because we would have had to loop all the way to get to another Ancient Wisp anyway. So Sir Davos smuggles a bunch of onions in. He gets through the Targaryen blockade. He gets food into Storm's End. And essentially saves Stannis. And because of that, Stannis does not have to surrender to the Targaryens. And Stannis, one of the reasons why Stannis was my favorite character is for the onions, for saving his people, he gave Davos a knighthood. He knighted him Sir Davos, and he took the name... I think he granted him... He did. Stannis granted him lands and titles. So he became Lord Davos, actually. And he took the name Seaworth for his house. So his name is now Sir Davos Seaworth. So for the onions, he gave him a knighthood, but for the smuggling, he cut off some of Davos's fingers. That was his punishment for the smuggling. Stannis' whole thing is, he is a black and white moralist. You need to be punished for the crimes you commit, and you need to be rewarded for the good deeds that you do. So he punished Davos by removing some fingers to pay for his years of smuggling and piracy, but knighted him for his service to king and country. And Davos has great respect for Stannis for this. It's one of the core aspects of Davos in the book, why he reveres Stannis so highly. That, and he raised him above his station as a lowly smuggler. He gave him a knighthood, he gave his sons a chance at a much better life. The point to all this is Davos knows the coastlines up and down Westeros better than any other character in the books. He is more qualified than anyone to do some tricksy stuff with boats in and around the coasts of Westeros. Probably just the eastern coast of Westeros. I don't think he sailed much down through the Summer Sea and then over into the Sunset Sea around Old Town or Lannisport. I think he stuck mostly to the Narrow Sea. But to sail to King's Landing, you have to sail past Dragonstone, which sits at the mouth of the bay that eventually leads up into King's Landing, Blackwater Bay. Davos knows these waters better than anyone. Dragonstone is the house seat of House Targaryen, and it's where Daenerys, the Dragon Queen, has set up her base of operations since coming back to Westeros. She's just defeated the army of the dead. She's won the war for Dawn. She's going to come south and finish her war. And all of her people are in the north. And she needs to go back to Dragonstone so she can organize and plot her battle plan against the Lannisters in King's Landing. That's the idea here. Half of her army has to go south by road because she has a bunch of blood riders on horseback, a bunch of infantry marching. The other half has to go by sea because she has an Ironborn fleet with her. Here's my Ancient Wisp. This is where it's going to happen, kids. Do I hit the I don't hit the meteorite, do I? I can't justify hitting the meteorite here. We're not going to do it. We're not going to hit it. I got another infusion, though. Okay. Okay. We'll take it. My expectation at this point is, okay, at this point in the show, ignoring everything in the books, at this point in the show, we've established Davos as this master smuggler. He's used his smuggling skills for the Dragon Queen before to get into King's Landing. He's done this before. We know he can do this. We know that there are people in her army who know everything about King's Landing and the Red Keep. She's got Tyrion Lannister. She's got Varys the Spider. She's got people who know King's Landing and the Red Keep specifically, and the Blackwater Bay outside of the Red Keep, so intimately that probably there's more knowledge about these things in Winterfell than in King's Landing at this point in the story. We've also seen her get jumped by the enemy's naval fleet before. They've hidden ships in a place where she didn't expect and basically ambushed her, got the drop on her in ways that she didn't expect. And they know that that fleet is still out there somewhere. And they know that their enemies know that they're going to Dragonstone at the mouth of Blackwater Bay. All of this is information that's been firmly established in the show. So, my mindset in this point is, okay, the last episode sucked. The whole plot with the Army of the Dead and the Night King, like, that's over now. It didn't pay off very well. It ended up meaning nothing. But all of these characters that I still love are here. The series can still end strong. They have all the tools they need to end this war without an army, even without dragons if they don't want to use them. They've got Davos, they've got Varys, they've got Arya Stark, who's a ninja assassin that can look like literally anybody in the world, and they've got Professor X. So, my thought at this point, as they're sitting there having this meeting, arranging all of the important characters around the table, is they're going to, because their forces have been dwindled by the Night King, they're going to put the specific skill sets that we've established for these characters, for Davos and Varys and Arya and the rest of them, and utilize them together to bring down the False Queen. That would be a great ending for the show. It would pay off all of these character arcs that we've set up. And then she says, Jon, you're riding south overland with Sir Davos. And I said, hashtag, what? Why would you send the best sailor in your army who intimately knows the waters you're sailing to and can get you into the city you're trying to besiege without anybody knowing it? Why would you send him south overland? There's no explanation for that. It doesn't pass 2 seconds of scrutiny. And what happens? They sail south without Sir Davos, and they get jumped by the Iron Fleet and suffer heavy losses. And if you think about it at all, it doesn't pay off. The more you think about it, the less sense it makes. All of this could have been avoided if any of the characters knew what I as a viewer know just from paying attention. None of her advisors, she has 2 of the greatest minds in Westeros, the greatest tactician the series has seen, and the best spy master in the world at her table, and neither of them say, hey, let's send Davos down with the fleet. Maybe Davos will do a better job getting our boats past the Iron Fleet and getting them to Dragonstone than... I don't even know who was in charge of the fleet. I don't think they even specified. Maybe Tyrion? I don't even think they said who's actually captaining these ships. It wasn't their captain that they had. They didn't use the best captain in Westeros for this task. So that's what I mean when I talk, like, the butt's hurting. That's what I'm talking about, is the story for 6 seasons was, the more you think about it, the more rewarding it gets. One of the big things from last season was all the characters go north beyond the wall to capture a zombie. The whole plot is, we can't fight the Army of the Dead without the Lannister army, and Cersei will never pledge her swords to our cause. So we're going to go north and capture a zombie and show her these things are real. And when we do that, she'll have no choice but to pledge her armies to us. So they go beyond the wall, and they suffer heavy losses, and blah, blah, blah. A couple things happen that don't make sense, and one of the Dragon Queen's 3 dragons is killed. It's the first one that she loses. And a lot of fans were really upset about that. Like, this is stupid. They're just out there on the ice. Like, this whole cockamamie plot doesn't make sense. But at the time, when I thought about it, it's like, you know what? This actually does make sense if you consider the character motivations. Because you have Jon saying this plan will work because he knows nothing. We've been told over and over, you know nothing, Jon Snow. And he wants to see the best in everybody. He's never personally met Cersei Lannister. He doesn't know what's been going on down south personally. Just like the people down south had no idea what was actually going on north beyond the wall. He had that blind spot. You have Tyrion Lannister, who says this is a good idea, he's also got a blind spot. He thinks his sister can still be swayed to the cause of righteousness, basically. Oh, I missed the monster up there. Gotta go all the way back around again. Alright, let's go. Like, it's a bad plan, but there are in-universe reasons why the characters might not realize it's a bad plan. And the people they send on this task are the right people for the job. They sent Jon Snow and Tormund Giantsbane and Thoros of Myr with his flaming sword, and I think Sandor Clegane went with them, and Beric Dondarrion. Like, all these super battle-hardened veterans. It's like, if you're going to send some dudes off on a zombie extraction mission, those are the dudes you're going to send, right? This wasn't a job for Davos Seaworth. They didn't send Davos north beyond the wall. And then you think about it from the other side. Like, okay, why would the Night King's armies not just kill all these characters? Well, it's because he still needs to come through the wall. The wall is still there. And the Night King presumably knows there are dragons afoot. He needs a reason for some dragon to come north beyond the wall so he can kill that dragon and take it for himself. Which is exactly what happens. And it's one of the things that people were really critical about for this whole storyline was, well, they did this thing that doesn't make sense, and now Dany doesn't have one of her dragons. No, but the Night King has them, and that's what he wanted all along. And then they show us that he uses that dragon to bring down the wall. So, you have this storyline which is kind of dumb and should not have worked, but when you really think about it, it does make sense in universe. Like, yeah, it's a terrible idea. This was a horrible idea. This was a bad plan from the start. But everybody involved had kind of good, in-character reasons for not noticing how bad the plan was. And then the Night King has good reasons for not just killing all these characters all at once. And then there's a good reason for why the Night King needed that dragon and didn't have another opportunity to get one before now. Like, all these things lined up. It was rewarding to think about. And looking back at the complaints from last season, because I spent a little bit of time doing that last night. I spent a little bit of time like, hey, is this just like something that happens every season in Game of Thrones? Are people always this upset about it? I got two really good items here. I got a Will-o'-the-Wisp, I got a Soldier Syringe. I like both of these quite a lot. Faster attack speed, explosions on kill, and we get the ukulele we didn't get to take a few minutes ago. But I feel like the core fan base, the people who want to think a lot about these things, I think the payoff was fine. It's not how I would have written it, and there's probably a lot of better ways they could have written it, but it makes sense. It makes enough sense in universe that it doesn't break suspension of disbelief, and the spectacle of the payoff of that wall coming down was magnificent. Like, I loved that scene. So the payoff was there. When I sat down and thought about it, I was maybe happy is the wrong word, but I was satisfied enough with the cockamamie capture a zombie plan that it didn't bother me. But the more I think about what's happened this season, and what's going to happen in the finale now, the less rewarded I feel. I feel like I've wasted all of these years watching this show. That's not a good feeling, and it's not one that I do a lot. I try to be very selective of handing myself over to these long-form shows, because I've been burned in the past. I know how it goes. But I thought I was in good hands with Game of Thrones, and it turns out that I'm not. Oh, well. I watched The Walking Dead for a long time. I think I watched Walking Dead until it started to get dumb. By which I mean, like, the story only works if you assume that every single character is really, really dumb. Like, it had a couple seasons like that. And then I watched a couple seasons beyond that, just to kind of confirm that it was going to stay dumb. You know what I mean? Like, alright, if they had a dumb season or two, but how dumb can they really stay? Oh, they're going to stay that dumb for that long? Alright, no problem. I can stop watching this show now. But when I stopped watching The Walking Dead, like, I didn't feel the butt hurt. I didn't make an hour-long Risk of Rain video complaining about Walking Dead having betrayed me and wasting all my time. Because Walking Dead had a lot of self-contained stories that did pay off well. Though there were character arcs that did pay off well. Characters that had good endings. Even the main characters, even characters like Rick and Carl and Michonne, like, even they paid off pretty well because they had multiple storylines. Like, they had a completed story that had a satisfying end, and then the writers had to write a new story for them for the next season. So it wasn't... It's almost an episodic story, in a sense. That, like, each season was a little self-contained. You can like one season of The Walking Dead, but not another season. I feel that way also about Dexter, another show that famously people abandoned in droves for how stupid it became. I also abandoned Dexter when it got a little too stupid for me, but each season of that show told its own story. And for the first 3 seasons, that story was excellent. I think I bailed on Dexter after Season 4. I think Season 4 was a little too dumb for me. But I like media that I don't have to think about at all. If it's entertaining in other ways. If it's entertaining with spectacle or something else just tickles me about it. I like media that rewards me for thinking about it. Shows like TV shows like Lost and Breaking Bad. And now Better Call Saul follow that mold. I find these to be the rewarding shows that I enjoy the most. I actually don't want to kill this... Oh, I don't have double jump. I'm trying to double jump and I can't. I don't have a Hopo Feather yet. But I don't want to kill this Toxic Beast yet. I want to not die from this Toxic Beast. I want to get up here. And we'll try to farm this infusion a little bit. That's what we'll do. Okay, good. Game of Thrones doesn't have any of those qualities, though. It hasn't been episodic. It hasn't had completed character arcs before. Unless you're talking about characters that have died. Most of whom have died in very satisfying ways. Most of the dead characters in the show, I think their character arc was fine. But they showed us a story in the first episode of the first season, and that story is just now paying off in the last episodes of the last season. When you have a story like that, it's not... I guess the saying goes, it's not... like it's the journey, not the destination. That's not true for a story like Game of Thrones. It's the journey and it's the destination. The journey is fun, but you still have to pay off well the things that you started with. So that's why the butt's hurting, guys. Are the butts hurting with you too? Is this... I know there's going to be people on all sides of this debate. I've been watching Twitter all morning, people like... The one that's really prominent right now is, so you guys watched the Dragon Queen burn people for 7 seasons, and now you're upset that she's burning people? Like, no, there's a little more to it than that. Like, it's not just that she's burned people, it's that she's burned the wrong people for the wrong reasons with no actual indication that she was going to. That's the big story that I'm seeing right now. This gets into some Game of Thrones backstory stuff. The Dragon Queen is the daughter of the Mad King Aerys, who was killed by my favorite character in the show, Jaime Lannister, many, many years ago during Robert's Rebellion. So the saying in universe is that when Targaryens are born, the gods flip a coin. And on one side of the coin is greatness. There have been great Targaryens. Rhaegar Targaryen, if he had not died in Robert's Rebellion, would have been a great king and brought much prosperity to the realm. Many of the Targaryen kings from history, King Aegon the Unlikely, who is one of the main characters of the Dunk and Egg stories, a novella that was written like a precursor to Game of Thrones, a prequel, was a great Targaryen king. But there's also been madness, is the other side of the coin. Some Targaryen kings are just mad. So when a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin, the world holds its breath. And that's what people are using now to justify this mad Dragon Queen ending. Is, well, they told you that she was going to go crazy. And that is a big element of Dany's stories, both in the show and in the books. That can she balance this greatness, this potential, this fire and blood, with the madness that is inherent in her family. That's been her struggle the entire show and all of the books. The difference, though, is Ares, when he went mad and Robert had to rebel against him, and he killed people who didn't deserve to be killed, and he was going to burn all of King's Landing, he was actually mad. Like, he wasn't mad in the sense of he was upset people were betraying him. He wasn't mad in he wanted the people to love him and they didn't. He was clinically actually insane. He was a bad king because his brain didn't work. He was fundamentally broken. He killed allies and enemies alike because he legitimately could not tell the difference between the two. He was betrayed by people, but the reason he was betrayed was because he was insane. Daenerys, the Dragon Queen, have I pronounced her name 8 different ways this video? I'm sorry. This is one of the curses of having read the books, is I know how to spell the character names, but not pronounce them. The show people all know how to pronounce the character names, but not spell them. There is no true answer. We're in the worst timeline. Daenerys is not insane. She's never been crazy. And there's never been any... Yeah, thank you for this. I'll take it. Woohoo! Disposable missile launcher. I want. In my face. She's not going insane. She wasn't born insane. Her brother was quite insane. He died in Season 1, and he deserved it. Daenerys has never been insane. So, when here, 2 episodes before the end of the series, they tell me, well, she's the Mad Dragon Queen, it doesn't look like the madness has surfaced. It looks like she's not acting out of madness. It looks like she's acting out of malice. She's doing things that she swore she would never do against people she swore she would never harm. Betraying ideals that she's been shown to hold consistently for 7 seasons. I don't think madness is that's the excuse the characters in universe are giving, but they've never shown her to be insane. They've never shown her to be going mad. She doesn't hallucinate. She's not paranoid. She doesn't punish people who haven't betrayed her. And people don't betray her without good reason. Until the end of this season, of course, when all character motivations totally go out the window. So all of these people, I'm going to hit them with this, and then I'm going to hit them with this. And that was a big hit. I should not have jumped down like that at that angle. Let's get out of here. Woo! This is bad, bad, bad news bears. Okay, we're going to try to go... Oh, what? He was coming out a little early there. Did he die? He didn't die. He's dead now, though. And we got, what, an Ancient Scepter? Oh, Ancient Scepter is good. I want that. Okay, that got real dicey. I made a couple of real bad jumps to get away from that overloader. It actually would matter a lot if I died on this run, because I do need to make it to the next level so I have a chance to get the Ifrit monster log. Ugh. See, all the people that... The backlash to the backlash, so to speak. The people like, well... She's been telling you for 7 seasons that she was going to go crazy and burn people. That's not what they were setting up. The expectation, because she's never been crazy before, she's never shown any signs of insanity. Everything they've ever showed us in the TV show about her brother Viserys and her father Aerys have been in contrast to Dany, not as a warning. It's never been framed as this is what Dany could become. It's always been framed as this is what Dany might become. Like, this is what Dany is capable of. But never, this is what Dany is going to become. This is what people should be afraid of. They haven't spent 7 seasons framing that. And they could have if they wanted to, but they didn't. The whole point of Dany's character is showing a contrast between her and the Mad Targaryens. So when she wins the war, and she has everything she wanted, or everything she said she wanted, she has the throne, she's won the day, her armies are still alive and mostly intact, her enemies have surrendered, all she has to do is kill the false queen, and she's done. And instead she decides to burn King's Landing down, to do the thing that both her father and the false queen have threatened to do and had to be punished because that's what they were going to do. To have her decide to do that specific thing for... I couldn't tell you what the reason was. I don't know what the in-universe justification for that is. The more I think about it, the less sense it makes. That's my life right now. That's why the butt's hurting. The butt's not going to be hurting here in a minute, because I'm going to see an Ifrit spawn, and we're going to get a monster log. We're going to get a monster log. It's going to be wonderful. I really need some verticality here. I really need a Hapapo feather or something here. There's a rusty jetpack. I guess ask and ye shall receive. I'll take that real quick. That's a little bit of a help. We really need that Hapapo feather. That's what we want right now. I don't know. It's taken me an hour and a half, but I kind of feel like I've said my piece about Game of Thrones, and this episode's not over yet, and I don't know when it will be over. Either we're going to die hilariously, like we have the past few videos, or we're going to get this game to a breaking run, at which point we'll play until it crashes, I guess. We don't need to go to Boar Beach. I won't go to Boar Beach if it's up here. Do I want to just sit here and farm this level, I wonder? To see if the Ifrits show up? That sure would be nice. But yeah, the butt's hurting, and I think it's going to be a while before I put my trust in another TV show like that again. It's not a good feeling to follow a piece of long-form media for many, many years, and then right at the end have it completely crash and burn. Especially with the type of story this was, where it kind of needed to stick the landing to make the rest of it worthwhile. So much of what came before is no longer worthwhile. So much of what came before in this story with these characters is just been abandoned. I don't mind when this happens in video games. Story in video games is whatever. It can have the best writing in the world, the worst. I don't really care. Because I've got gameplay. If the game's fun, I don't care what the story is. I could not summarize the story of Final Fantasy 13 here, but I like the game. I like playing it. I don't care that the story's dumb. Doesn't matter. And then the sequels, as far as I can tell, each of the sequels to that game, Final Fantasy 13-2, which is the best title of a video game that's ever happened, Final Fantasy 13-2, and then Lightning Returns, which is essentially 13-3. Each of these stories just abandons everything that came before and hits the stupid reset button, and now you're in this totally new story, which has not been set up, and which you can't have expected, and which doesn't make sense if you think about it. Like, all of that's totally true. Every sin that Game of Thrones commits has been committed by the 13 games. But whatever, the gameplay's fun. I don't need the games to make sense story-wise. Some people do. Some people need, especially like an RPG like that, some people need the narrative to be there. I used to, back when I was a teenager, back in the day, I used to revere narrative above all other elements possible in a video game story. Or in a video game, I mean. And story was the reason I played games. I played predominantly RPGs, lots of text-heavy games with lots of story, and if a game wasn't going to have a good story, I didn't want to play it. It didn't matter what kind of game it was. A couple of games from my childhood were grandfathered in, like Mega Man kind of games. Like, I played those still. But yeah, if a game didn't have a good story, I wasn't going to enjoy it. Of course, the punchline to that joke is, back when I was a teenager, I had no idea what a good story was, so I ended up liking a lot of terrible stories and praising them for being awesome because I was 15 and didn't know what the hell I was talking about, while shunning a lot of really great video games because they didn't have a good story, because story's all that matters. I wonder what stupid opinions I have now that when I'm like 45 or 50, I'll look back on and be like, oh god. I'll have to revisit this video in 5 years and be like, did I really care that much about Game of Thrones? Really? Ugh. Here's an Ifrit. He's going to drop a monster log for me. It's gonna be wonderful. That was not a monster log. Well, I guess the run continues. We might just get a big old break and run going. We might end up going until we crash. I don't think we're in a lot of... Do we have Guardian Hearts in this run? We've done a couple runs this session, so I'm kind of confused as to what items I currently have and which ones I don't. I do have a Guardian Heart, so I can recharge that Guardian Heart as much as I need to. Okay, here's His Majesty. There's His Majesty. There it went. Oh, I don't have Head Stomper, so I can't actually damage the spider like this. I can do this, though. Yeah, it's going to be a while before I was like, you know what, I'm going to watch this show from the beginning again. I usually don't. I usually binge watch shows. But I know that if everybody did that, no show would ever have a good payoff. Because, like, I know Game of Thrones is going to have prequel shows. They're in, I think, production right now. I don't know what they're going to be about. Maybe it'll be the Dunk and Egg stories. I don't know. Maybe it'll be about Robert's Rebellion, and we'll get to see the Siege of Storm's End with Davos Seaworth. I have no idea, but... if enough people are like, you know what, I'm not watching this new Game of Thrones show until it's completely done with, all of the seasons are out, and I see what and people say whether or not it's good, because I don't want to waste my time for 7 years on a show that ends the way the first Game of Thrones show ended, it's not going to go 7 seasons, because nobody's watching it. It's not going to get greenlit. I need more water. I know that some Let's Players edit out coughs and drinking water and stuff. Not my style. I'm not going to do it. I'm too real. I'm too real for that. Alright, let's see some more Ifrits, if you don't mind. There are a lot of shows that I am invested in right now that I'm watching as they happen. I'm waiting for new seasons on some of them. The Handmaid's Tale. I am way deep in the Kool-Aid on Handmaid's Tale. I love that show. I just have a soft spot for despair porn, I guess is the buzzword for it. These, like, completely alien and, like, destroyed, like, alternate history stories. So another show that I'm really into is The Man in the High Castle, and that might be a good contrast to Game of Thrones, because this is a show that set a bunch of expectations in the first couple seasons, because it's based on a book. But the show has now gone further than the book. Like, if they're going to keep going with the story, they have to invent new stuff. So the most recent... Oh, I got to throw these one more time. Oh, that's what's happening. I got Ancient Scepter. So whenever I do my 4th ability, it's not going to cool down until I use it. Throw it twice. Okay, I was wondering, how come that ability's not cooling down? That's why. It makes sense. I'm on board. So yeah, The Man in the High Castle. And I'm not going to spoil anything about Man in the High Castle. Even though the title of this video is what it is. Because I still enjoy that show. And there's a chance that someone has listened to the video this far and might still take the recommendation. This is an alternate history story based on a book. And the story is, like, what if the Nazis won World War II and took over America? So the eastern United States is taken over by Germany, and the West Coast is taken over by Japan. And the story is about what happens in this world, and people in the world, like, wishing for a better world. And it's kind of poignant in the sense that when these people talk about wishing for a better world, like, the reader knows the world they're wishing for is the one we're in. Like, we're in the better world. Like, we are in their ideal world. So the book doesn't give a resolution to this story. It kind of plays with some themes. It sets some stuff up. It doesn't give a resolution to the story. The TV show can't do that. It plays with all the same themes. Obviously, it has to. It's based on the book. It does the source material good justice, I think. But if you get greenlit for a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th season, the story has to keep going in this setting. It's not enough to just play with the ideas of the setting. You actually have to pay off some of the story. So it has to deviate from the books. And the most recent season did start deviating from the book tremendously. It was set up a little bit in previous seasons, and it's done in such a way that it doesn't betray the book. The book implies that what's happening in the show is it's like a logical extension of something in the book. If the book had had 20 more chapters, it probably would have gone a similar direction. But instead of just being this alternate history despair porn story, it's now turning into like a sci-fi story. It has all the same despair porn elements, but the sci-fi elements are getting greater. They're starting to explain kind of the science behind the fantastic things that happened in the show. Fantastic as in literally fantastical, not as in like just good things. Like supernatural things have scientific explanations in the show, and they're going to have to keep building on this. So they've defied expectations in the sense that they have to deviate from what the show set out to be to begin with. God damn it, this means that my whole definition of what makes a good show just doesn't work, because I thought of a great counterexample in The Man in the High Castle. I just can't win. I can't win today. I can't win. None of these thought experiments are taking me anywhere. None of my opinions are being validated. Nothing works and everything is terrible forever. My only solace is we don't live in the universe where the Nazis won World War II. Ugh. Anyway, I'm super invested in this show. The Handmaid's Tale, Better Call Saul, I think we're getting back next year. So there are still shows I'm watching while they're airing. I don't feel good about any of them right now. I feel really cynical right now. Where's my Ifrits? I feel really cynical about not having any Ifrits. Should I loop back around and try to get to a level 2, I think? No, I think I'm going to stay here and fight Ifrits until I either die, get the log, or crash. I said I'm not going to get attached to any of these runs, but I'm going to get attached to this one. We're only 36 minutes in. It can take a long, long time before we get anywhere useful. We're going to buckle in on this one, I think. Unfortunately, I don't really have much else to talk about. I could shift gears completely and talk about the board game that I'm writing right now. Should I do that? I guess I did put a video of it on the YouTube channel. Maybe I should explain myself. I don't know if this is a topic that I want to get into, but I think it's a topic I could easily talk about for another hour or two. We might be here for another hour or two, so I guess I'll get into it. So, completely changing directions. For Christmas, my wife and I got a board game called Disney Villainous. And the point of this game is you pick one of the Disney villains. And, ooh, where did that... Oh, that came from that blighted snow golem there. I didn't see him there. Let's go up here till my Guardian Heart grows back. In fact, let's go up here until we get all our hit points back. The point of this game is you... There, I took the big hit, but whatever, it was fine. The point of this game is you pick a Disney villain, and everybody at the table has a different villain, and every villain has a different objective. Every villain wants different things and wins in a different way. So it's an asymmetrical game. If you pick Jafar the first time you play the game, you're going to have a particular experience. And win or lose, next time you play the game, if you pick, say, Captain Hook, you're going to have a much different experience. Because the rules are different. What you want is different. How you approach the game is different. And we got hard addicted to this game. Me and Peanut play it a lot. It works pretty well as a two-person game. It's not the best way to play the game, but we don't have any actual kids, so... I got so addicted to this game that I installed a mod on Tabletop Simulator that somebody put down. And I'm playing it online. And I've been playing it at least a couple times a week for the past month or two. Been playing Disney Villainous. And I got a whole bunch more people hooked on the game. And we're like, you know what? This is a fun game, but it'd be fun if it had villains from properties other than Disney characters. So I've been making custom villainous decks for Final Fantasy villains. If you look, a couple weeks ago I uploaded a video for a deck based on Golbez, the villain from Final Fantasy IV, and I've got a bunch more decks that I'm working on, and we're working on playtesting them, getting the assets to put together, just the digital assets for the cards for Tabletop Simulator. I know I have one dude who's like, oh, I'm going to print my own versions of this game and have a hard copy of Final Fantasy Villainous. I don't know about all that. That seems really expensive to me. And maybe a little bit illegal. Considering you'd have to go to a print shop and be like, will you print 100 cards for all the Final Fantasy guys? Which, for copyright reasons, is not a totally kosher idea. I don't like this blighted nerd right here. I do have an infusion this run, right? Yeah, we have an infusion this run. I need a hobo feather. I need one. Yo, I heard you like feathers, so I put a feather in your feather, etc., etc. Yeah, we need to get a hobo feather if we're really going to farm this level. I mean, we can just get one here. It'll drop eventually. But, so I sat down and I picked 8 Final Fantasy villains to make decks for. I thought 8 would be a good number. And I think as I make some of the videos going forward for these other decks, as they become complete, right now, one of the decks is like ready for prime time. I think it's well balanced enough. I'm going to take this, actually. We're going to take the Captain's Wheel. I don't know where my box landed. I just used the box. I don't know where it is. One is ready for prime time. It's balanced enough. I think it works with the base game. There it is. I just found it. It works with the base game, and that's Golbez. Golbez has had the most play testing. He's one of the simpler decks that I've drawn up. We know he works. We know he feels good. We know he's fun. We know he can win. We know he doesn't always win. The balance that I'm shooting for is when somebody wins a game of Disney Villainous, like, you want somebody to win, clearly, but you also want everybody else at the table to be within 1 or 2 moves of their win condition. And that's where Golbez is. And I'm like, you know what? The Golbez deck feels really good. So one deck is done. We have 3 other decks, Garland, Kefka, and Arden, that are in a playable state. They're done in the sense that they work in-game, but they have balance issues that we're still dealing with. They're not ready for prime time in the way that Golbez is. And then I have, on top of that, I have one more deck, Queen Brawny from Final Fantasy IX, who I've just completed the deck. We haven't even started playtesting it yet. So we're at various states of development with the various decks. And then I've got 3 decks that I'm going to make that aren't finished at all. I have one of those decks, Ultimecia from Final Fantasy VIII, who one of my viewers made just some quick and dirty cards for playtesting, but the deck didn't work at all, and I had to completely rewrite it. I had to go all the way back to the drawing board. All the way back to the start. So that deck's back at square one. But I guess what I'm going to do then is talk about... This is going to be so boring if you don't know what Disney Villainous is, but... If you like board games, I definitely recommend you try it out. I guess you might... You do kind of have to be a fan of the Disney canon to enjoy this game. I don't know that the game itself... I mean, the game is fun. I got addicted to it. And a bunch of other people I know got addicted to it. But I do think the core game, you kind of do have to like Disney stuff to really get the most out of it. To, like, enjoy the artwork in the game. To enjoy how the decks, the mechanics of each deck fits the characters thematically. So, like, Ursula's deck from The Little Mermaid feels different from the Queen of Hearts deck from Alice in Wonderland. And the differences between the 2 decks make a lot of sense for the characters. Our favorite card in Villainous is Tick-Tock, the giant crocodile from Peter Pan. It says, like, whenever Captain Hook moves to Tick-Tock's location, he must discard his hand. Oh, it's wonderful. Best card in the game. Stuff like that. You have to you do have to like the Disney canon to appreciate that kind of stuff. But I do. I'm a big Disney fan. And I think most people are at least enjoy some Disney movies. Like, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who doesn't like at least one of the characters in this Villainous game. And that's kind of what I was aiming for with the Final Fantasy decks, too. Like, not everybody's going to agree with the choices of villains that I picked, but you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who doesn't like any of them. But I did have some criteria for when I chose the 8 villains that I did. Part of it was, I'm going to be honest, is just, hey, you know what, it's my game, I'm the one making it, and I'm going to pick my favorite villains. Like, that's definitely part of it. I'm not going to deny it. I gave preferential treatment to the villains that I really like, and dissed some of the villains that I really didn't like. That's true. Not going to deny it. But there is still a method to my madness, unlike Queen Daenerys, because there's no method to her madness at all, god damn it. So, the first criteria was, I do want to have because I'm a bleeding heart leftists try to be social justice-y and fair to all people, I did want to maintain a balance between male and female villains. That was very important. I said, you know what, I want to do maybe 6 or 8 decks, and I want to try to keep them equal. So let's like do 3 dudes and 3 ladies. We'll try to get to that ballpark. I ended up doing 8 villains, and there ended up being 4 men, 3 women, and 1 unspeakable monstrosity. So the balance wasn't perfectly kept, but it's pretty close, and I think I made the right choices here. Part of the reason is there's just not a lot of compelling female villains in Final Fantasy games. I know I mentioned this a little bit, I think, in my previous Risk of Rain video. I did talk about villainous a little bit, not to the extent that I plan on talking about it today. And I got a comment just this morning that I read that I thought was funny. It's like, hey, if you need a female villain for Final Fantasy, how about Jill Nabat from Final Fantasy 13? Really? Jill Nabat? Is that a... like, I barely even know who that character is. She is a villain, she is a female, she is in Final Fantasy 13. Those are all things that are true. But she's not a memorable character. She doesn't do anything at all in the game. She's not important to the story. She doesn't matter at all. I didn't pick Jill Nabat. She's not one of the ones I went with. What I want to do is just kind of talk about the 8 villains I went with and why. So, the main criteria I had after, like, we want to try to maintain half and half, men and women, is first of all, I want to use villains that were impactful in the plot of their story. So, like, Jill Nabat would not be a good selection, even if I really wanted another female villain, because she's not that impactful for the story. Like, if I really was desperate for another female villain, I would go with probably Cloud of Darkness from Final Fantasy III. I hate that character. She's not even really a character. She's not a character in the game she's from at all. She's just a force of nature that is kind of an inevitability that arises from the actions of the real villain of the plot, who is Xandy. But, I mean, she has boobs, so... And the Dissidia games treat her as a character that's actually a character and also actually female. So if I was really desperate, I would have to... Yeah, Cloud of Darkness is impactful in the plot of her game. Genova from Final Fantasy VII has been floated. I could see going with Genova as a female villain from Final Fantasy. Would probably work okay. I know that somebody from Final Fantasy XIV was floated, I think. So, still no Monster Log from the Ifrit. We got his horn, though. We do have a horn, that's nice. The other major thing that I wanted, though, was I want to explore deck mechanics that don't get explored in the base game of Villainous. I don't know how Villainous was created. I imagine there was a lot of notes from Disney. What's the name of the... I think the name of the company that made Villainous is Prospero Games. I imagine there's a lot of notes from Villainy. Okay, we're going to license you these characters. Here's the rules. Here's what needs to be in these decks. Like, you have to make this movie reference or something. Like, you have to not do this with this character. The character artwork has to look like this. I'm sure there was a lot of notes from a thematic and licensing standpoint. I'm also sure they had a game design document. Something like, these are rules we're not going to break with these decks. We're going to have a bunch of different characters that work a bunch of different ways, but there are things about these decks that we're not going to touch. Every character's deck works this way for this reason. An example being, it's an asymmetrical game. Half of the game is you're trying to reach your win condition, which is different from everybody else's win condition. But the other half of the game is you're trying to prevent other players from reaching their win conditions, which again, are different from everyone else's win condition. So when you decide to play Ursula, first of all, your strategies are going to be different from everybody else at the table because you're doing things in a different way. And second of all, when people try to stop you, they're going to try to stop you in different ways than other villains can be foiled. For Ursula specifically, this means she defeats heroes that come out differently than other villains defeat their heroes, and different things hurt her than hurt other heroes. she has a card in her Fate deck, in her Screw You Over deck, that says, okay, spawn a character in Ursula's board, and this character steals one of her items. If that happened to Captain Hook, it'd be like, haha, whatever, I'm Captain Hook, I don't care, take it. When that happens to Ursula, it's devastating to her objective. If that happens to Ursula at a certain point in the game, it really feels like you can't win anymore. So that's the asymmetric feel of it. And I'm sure that was one of their design goals, is okay, there are no cards in any villain's actual deck that can hurt another villain. To hurt another villain, you have to go into their Fate deck. That's the only way to do it, and that's consistent across all 9 characters. There's 6 in the base game and 3 in the expansion. It came out. So you can kind of see a set of design rules that they have for the game. A kind of baseline, this is what the game would be like if it weren't asymmetrical. What's really interesting about the game, though, is that you can imagine having this core rule set, and then each of the villains breaks or bends it in a kind of interesting way. Just as an example, one of the core rules is every villain has 4 actions, has 4 locations on their board, and 4 actions at each location. This is totally consistent, except for Prince John from Robin Hood, and the Evil Queen from Snow White in the expansion. These characters, Prince John has a spot where he only has 3 actions on his board. Evil Queen has a spot where she has 5 actions. And the reason for breaking that core rule has... Is that a monster log? What was that? What did I... That looked like a monster log, but I couldn't tell. What was that I just got? No, that was... What is that item down there? I have to go look. Is that the old box or something? I don't even know what it's called. It looked like a monster log when it was stacked on top of everything else. But there wasn't an Ifrit there, so I don't know why I thought that. So the reason that they broke this rule for Prince John and the Evil Queen, like, okay, these characters don't have 4 actions on every space, are very meaningful for those characters' gameplay. It impacts how you play them. It impacts how they approach their win conditions. The reasons for breaking that core rule are very clear and very purposeful. So my other design goal of setting out these Final Fantasy villains is each one of these decks is going to break one of these core rules in an interesting way. I'm not going to use a villain unless I can think of interesting deck mechanics to use. So a lot of the villains, I thought of the deck mechanic I wanted to try first, and then thought of a Final Fantasy villain that would fit that mold. So the first villain I knew I was going to have to put in the game was Garland from Final Fantasy 1, because he's from Final Fantasy 1. Like, I have to have Garland. If I have a collection of Final Fantasy villains, you have to use the guy from Final Fantasy 1. Doing otherwise just does not make any sense. So I didn't think of his mechanics until afterwards, and his rule that he breaks is typically you only draw 4 cards, draw up to 4 cards if you have less than that at the end of your turn. Garland has a way to draw up to 6 cards, but if he does that, he has to move a certain way on his next turn and take a certain action. And actually, that's really the only rule he breaks. Everything else is... Oh, no, he has ways to remove certain cards from the game, which no other villain can. Every other villain has a discard pile that eventually gets reshuffled. Garland has a few ways to remove cards he doesn't want from the game entirely and get rid of them altogether. And Garland's in a weird place because the people who are playtesting him really love the deck. They love how powerful he and his deck feel. But he, to my knowledge, he hasn't won a game yet, and I worry it might be too hard to win with him. But we're keeping an eye on it. That's why we're doing playtesting and balancing with Garland. So the second one I have is Golbez. And I kind of knew I was going to use Golbez anyway. He was another one that I picked the villain before I picked his mechanics. But the mechanic I wanted to play with Golbez, because he's from my favorite Final Fantasy game, he's one of my favorite villains, like, I've got to put him in, right? So Golbez, typically a villain can only play as many cards on their turn as they have play actions. Every villain has a couple of spots with 1 play action, and then every villain has 1 spot with 2 play actions, where they can play 2 cards on the same turn. Golbez's rule is he can play as many cards as he wants on his turn, as long as he can afford to pay for them out of his power pool. You use power in this game to play cards. It's like mana from Magic the Gathering, if you're familiar. Or, I don't know what they use. I guess they use mana in Hearthstone as well would be a better, more contemporary example, wouldn't it? I still don't have a hobo feather. Ba-bum-bum-ba-da-ba-bum. So Golbez, it sounds like a kind of basic mechanic. It's just a very simple way to differentiate his deck. And the reason for that is because I had the Golbez deck first. The idea for, like, I need to find a mechanic that fits Golbez, not the other way around. I think the Golbez deck turned out really good, though. It really does feel like Golbez. He's like this mastermind plotter. He has all of these powerful allies that can do his bidding for him. When you play a whole bunch of cards all at once, it feels like you're committing a master stroke that you've been planning for a long time, which is exactly in line with Golbez's character. So I think the mechanics of his deck really do feel like Golbez. I think it came out really well. And that's been the feedback that I've gotten as well from people who have played his deck. I've actually been real skittish about playing these decks myself, because I feel like I'm too close to the mechanics and too close to the cards to be able to view them objectively. It's more useful to have other people play these decks and then work off of their feedback, I think. So, the third villain I wanted to put in the game was a-hurtin from Final Fantasy 15. I go back and forth on deciding whether he was going to be a mandatory inclusion or not, because he's from the most recent Final Fantasy game. I think you could get away with not having a-hurtin. I do happen to really love a-hurtin and really love Final Fantasy 15, so he's a good fit for the game from that standpoint. But when you screw other players over in the game, you use a mechanic called Fate. You have a Fate deck that you draw from, or I'm sorry, the other players draw from, and play on you. You don't get to do anything with your own Fate deck. It's just there for other players to use to make sure you don't win. The exception to that in the base game is Captain Hook from Peter Pan. Captain Hook needs to get Peter Pan on the board to win the game, and Peter Pan is in his Fate deck. So Captain Hook is a little strange in that he has ways to go into his own Fate deck and draw cards from his Fate deck, play cards from his Fate deck, look at cards. He has ways to get Peter Pan out without waiting for somebody else to play a Fate action against him. It gives Captain Hook a very unique feel in the game, because you always want to Fate everybody else. You always want to push everybody else back, but you got to be careful about Fating Captain Hook, because if you do it at the wrong time, you're just helping him. You're saying, oh, thanks for bringing Peter Pan out for me. Now I can throw away all these cards that I now don't need, because I don't need to go into my own Fate deck. I can mill my deck more efficiently and get more powerful cards out. Like, you don't want to Fate Captain Hook, is kind of the strategy. It's bad to Fate Captain Hook. So we have a character in the game who, A, needs something out of his Fate deck, but B, you don't want to Fate him, because he needs something out of his Fate deck. So I'm like, okay, I want to play around with that idea. I'd like to have a character who can go into his own Fate deck and do stuff, but other players are not skittish about fating. Like, you still want to Fate this guy, and I'm thinking it's got to be a-hurtin. In the story of Final Fantasy 15, a-hurtin is like this tragic hero. He's kind of the plaything of the Fates. He gets screwed over by the gods, he gets screwed over by his brother and heroes and kings, and he eventually decides, you know what, the Fates have used me long enough, now I'm going to get my payback by essentially making Fate my plaything. And that's kind of what he does in the game. He sets up, like, there's this prophecy about what the hero of the game has to do, and it plays right into a-hurtin's hand. So I constructed a deck for a-hurtin that he needs to use his Fate deck in a certain way to win, and his gameplay is structured a little bit differently from everybody else. So fating him can be a good thing or a bad thing. Usually the way it's built is it's bad if another player plays Fate cards on a-hurtin. It's good if a-hurtin is able to play Fate cards on himself. So that's where the deck is right now. People who've played a-hurtin say he feels really good. I think he still needs a little bit more balancing. We have some more I think the newest round of changes made to the deck we're going to look at probably tonight or tomorrow night. And we'll see where he is. So another aspect of Villainous is a lot of what's in your Fate deck are heroes, characters from the movie that get played to your realm that can thwart you in a variety of ways. And some of the villains care about heroes, and some of them don't. Most villain decks have allies where you can that you can use to vanquish the heroes that get played in your realm. But what ends up happening a lot of the time with a lot of villains that I've played is usually getting rid of heroes in your realm is not a priority. There's not really a villain designed around the idea of your heroes are there and they're all over the place and they're doing bad stuff to you and you want to get rid of them, and on your turn the best thing you can do is get rid of the heroes. So I wanted to pick a Final Fantasy game that has a reputation for having these plucky heroes that get chased around a lot by the bad guys. And I settled on Queen Brani from Final Fantasy IX. So Final Fantasy IX is probably like the most lighthearted, happy-go-lucky Final Fantasy game. The entire first disc of the game, because that's the first thing people are going to ask, why Brani and not Kuja? Well, the theme I was going for, this whole allies versus the intrepid, plucky heroes deck that I wanted to build, works really well for the first parts of Final Fantasy IX. Like, Disc 1 of Final Fantasy IX, it's exactly what's happening. The plucky heroes are making their daring, narrow escapes, and the villains are always one step behind. So, and Queen Brani is pretty much not in the story anymore after the end of, Disc 2. Most of what she does happens on Disc 1. So really the deck is based on Final Fantasy IX Disc 1. There are people watching this that don't understand what I mean by Disc 1. Video games used to come on multiple discs, and you actually had to switch the disc over. This was a thing we had to do before digital downloads. But I think Queen Brani works really well for this, because the way that I have created this plucky hero idea, and we have not seen this deck played yet. The deck is finished in the sense that if we can put it into a game and play it. I don't know if it's going to work. We'll see. Princess Garnet is one of the main heroes from Final Fantasy IX, and Queen Brani spends a lot of time on Disc 1 of that game chasing her down, trying to capture her and get her back to the castle. So I'm like, okay, let's put a hero in Queen Brani's realm, Princess Garnet, that cannot be vanquished and that the queen cannot move herself. So every card in her deck has arrows on it that when Queen Brani plays them, Princess Garnet moves somewhere in her realm. And Brani has to chase her around and try to get her and do things to her, while also taking care of all of the heroes that keep popping up all the time. That's the idea of the deck, to have a kind of heroes versus villainous allies deck while you're chasing one of the heroes all around the world. We'll see if it works. I hope it does. The other thing that can happen in the game is you can have locations in your realm locked. And typically what this means is at the beginning of the game, there's a space on the board you can't move to, and then you do something during the game which unlocks the space, and now you can go there. Typically, not every villain has a locked space, but any villain with a locked space, unlocking it is part of their objective. Like, you can't win the game without doing it. So I'm like, okay, what if we have a villain who takes that, to the extreme? Like, the entire game is about locking and unlocking a space. So the perfect villain for this idea was Ultimecia from Final Fantasy VIII. Ultimecia is a witch that lives in the future that she can't physically interact with the heroes. She's in a different time period. But there's a type of magic that allows her to send her will into the past and possess people there. So she's very limited in her movements, but she's still very powerful in the sense that she can exert her dominance over other characters in the plot and get them to do what she wants. That's a big part of what the game is about, especially early on. So Ultimecia starts the game in one location that she cannot move from, and her goal is to unlock the spaces on her board, possess sorceresses in each of those spaces, and then lock them again. Once they're all locked, time compression is complete and she wins. I can get you through your wall, through your wall, through your wall. I can get you through. I can't reach it. I can't friggin' reach it. I can't get it. It's there. That's the monster log. I can't jump high enough to get it. Oh my god, don't do this to me. It's gonna vanish. It's gonna disappear. I can't get there. I can't get up there. I need... It's gonna... Oh no. Oh no. Maybe monster logs don't... I got it. I got it. I got monster... Okay, kill me. Just stomp on me and kill me. Stomp on me and kill me. If I keep playing, the game will crash and I won't get to save the monster log. So we're going to let these colossi kill me. I must have just found just the perfect pixel. I guess the monster log... Or I guess they can't kill me anymore. We gotta wait for some elites to spawn in. I must have found like just the right pixel jumping from this ledge to grab just the edge of that monster log. My goodness. I'm just going to jump down here. I don't know why I'm grabbing items. I don't think the Colossus can kill me. I don't think he can damage me fast enough. Honestly. I do not want to risk the crash, though. Okay, let's do this. Where's this blighted mechanical spider at? There he is. He'll get me. He'll do the job. There's also this, oh yeah, he'll do it. He's got it. We've also got this electric man here who'll help me out. Oh, I gotta keep moving, because I got bustling fungus. I will regenerate too much health. I can't die now. I'm too far in the break that I can't die. Oh, you know, I was standing in war banners there. That probably wasn't good. Can I please get killed? That's all I want out of life. I don't know if manually quitting the game will allow me to die or not. Is the problem. Do I have bustling fungus? I do. I have 3 of them, so I do have to keep moving. If I have bustling fungus to stand in one place, I'll eventually get the big heals. Okay, it's happening. It's happening. We're down to 5 hundo. We're not getting the big heals anymore. Okay, there's my timekeeper secret. We're down to 2 hundo, 3 hundo. Okay, we're regenerating too much. One more good hit. Who got me? Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. The other villains are Kefka, Sin, and Shantado from Final Fantasy XI, which I know I'm going to have to justify, but we can do that in the next video. We got it! The Ifrit monster log. Oh, what a glorious day this is for me. I got the Ifrit monster log. We just need the Ancient Wisp now. And he's a much more common boss than the Ifrit is. Which brings our total up to 99.1. 99.1% is about how far they got through Game of Thrones runtime before they completely ruined it.